we will be we're here today just going to talk a little bit about Tinkercad. We're going to talk a little bit about 3D design and something very important that we are going to need in our lunar city. So just want to welcome again everybody to the Future City event that is happening today. Hopefully everybody's been having fun. Group A, hopefully everyone has enjoyed everything so far. And it's most important that we all want to have fun. And right now we're going to talk about solar panels and we're going to talk about how to give our home some power. And it's very important to give our home some power because imagine, we're on the moon without electricity. Life can get a little boring. So we got to give ourselves some power, got to give ourselves some electricity, and we need to understand how we need to do that. So my name is Mamoon Hussein. I'm going to be your engineering outreach program instructor today. And let's just dive right into it. And let's talk about how solar panels work. So in this first image over here, we see that the sun's rays are being pushed down onto these little cells over here. So each individual thing on the solar panel is called a cell. And the way that it works is that it follows something called a photovoltaic or a PV system. Now, you're probably wondering, what does that really mean? So we can see that the sun's rays goes into the solar panels and it basically converts that into electricity. And the way that that works is that in the second image over here, we can see that there's 4 layers that we see over here. And these layers are consisted of something called silicon, the little plastic stuff you may probably see it in like slime and things like that. And what silicon does, there's going to be silicon layers inside every single solar cell. So every small blue square is going to be a single cell, right? And every cell will have this N-type layer and this P-type layer over here. So the N-type layer has all the electrons, you see all the minuses, so N for negative, and then P-type layer with all the positive, with all the protons. So you have all the P-type layers, so positive. So the way that this works is all the sun's rays goes into these 2 layers. And in this third image here, you will see that you have the N-type layer, the P-type layer, N minus P plus. And in the middle, there's something called a depletion region. And when these two layers are being pushed against each other, it actually creates its own electric current. And a way to kind of showcase that, here in the fourth image, we can see that the sun is actually all its rays being put into the solar panel over here. All these cells create this big panel. And we can see once it reaches this panel, we can see that electricity is being sent through a current through the negative over here. So the electrons are creating a current that goes all the way up over here, and it reaches the light. So then it goes past the N-type layer. And once it reaches the light, it actually reaches the depletion region. So the depletion region actually just gives it energy. So it's basically where everything kind of has the peak of where the electricity is going to be. Once it exits the depletion region, it'll come back out and it'll go back to the P-type layer and go back into the solar panel, creating an electric flow. Now, if one of these layers are missing, you won't be able to have the electricity and the solar panels won't be able to work. So now I want to think about, when do we actually use solar panels on Earth? Maybe sometimes if you go for a long drive, you might see some solar panels in like a farmyard. Maybe if you go to you see big buildings, you'll see solar panels on top of it. And something that we want to consider, those solar panels that we see, they're in a place where, it's not going to be in like a snowy or a rainy region. You don't really see them there. And that's because a snowy, and if it's like super rainy, it'll actually end up damaging the solar panels. And we don't really want that to be happening. We also want to consider in a place of low humidity. So let's say I went to some place with high humidity, like the Amazon rainforest. Now, the rainforest will probably have a lot of sun, but it'll also have a lot of rain. And because of the humidity, all the moisture in the air is actually going to cause the solar panels to kind of deteriorate. It might start breaking up. It might start rusting. And then it kind of defeats the purpose of the solar panel if it doesn't work. And we also want to consider light winds. So it's okay if it's a little bit windy. However, once it gets so windy to the point where the solar panels start ripping off, because here we can see in the picture over here, the solar panels aren't really like attached to anything. They're just kind of resting on the ground. And we want to consider that, right? We don't want it to be like flying away in a tornado. We want it to have maybe some light wind is okay. And the most important thing about the solar panels on Earth is making sure it's in a sunny place. So let's say I put a solar panel in my room, thinking, you know what, maybe I'll look at free electricity. I don't need to worry about electricity. If I ever lose power, I have the solar panel in my room. And that won't really work because my room doesn't really have an abundance of sunlight. Like again, in the picture, we can see all the sun going into the solar panel. And something very important to consider when we put it onto our lunar city. So let's talk a little bit about what weather is like on the moon. And hopefully this video could maybe help you and guide you in that direction because we talked about different types of weather that we need. Alrighty. So now we kind of understand what weather is like on the moon. We know there won't ever really be a really bad weather day. So it kind of works out. We don't need to worry about the humidity. We don't need to really worry about the snow. We don't really need to worry about the rain. We just want to worry about how to get sun, you know, to the moon. And obviously, kind of looks towards the sun, right? So we want to consider how we will actually get our solar panels to the sunlight. And we actually need sun to give our solar panels and city some energy. And there's some design considerations you want to think about when we actually do this. So, something I like to think about is how we can make sure the solar panels will always get sunlight. So, I've heard a lot of people just say, just point it towards the sun. Now, yes, kind of technically works, but we're not always like, although the earth is always pointing towards the sun, the earth is going to rotate, and then so is the moon. The moon does rotate around the sun as well. And there's going to be times in the day where the moon doesn't receive sunlight. So what are you going to do? What if you don't have energy at that point? How are you going to make sure that it's always getting sunlight? And the other thing we want to consider is how we're going to avoid the dark side of the moon. So what if we are running out of space and all that stuff is the dark side of the moon? How do we get solar panels to give energy to sunlight and to give energy to the solar panels? There's no sunlight because there's no sunlight from the dark side of the moon, right? And now we want to consider, maybe if we put solar panels on a roof, will it be able to get more energy? Because once buildings start coming up, if you put it on the ground, you won't really have any sunlight coming around, right? You heard in the video they said that slowly you can just start once you bring one set of materials, you can start creating more and more and more until the point where maybe one day it's just gonna be like a super big city. You won't be able to have energy coming to the ground. Maybe you might need to put on a roof. Maybe you want to put on a rotating disc so it's always getting energy. So maybe at 9 p.m. it points north, at 6 p.m. it points west, at 7 a.m. it points northeast, something like that, right? So these are just some design considerations you want to think about when you actually do your designs. And to use our designs, we're actually going to be using Tinkercad today. So here we can see a little bit of a Tinkercad over here. In this image, we see all these solar panels. It's like, how many of them are on the right image? Like 12 of them just right here, giving you a lot of energy. And today we're going to be using Tinkercad to actually create our own. So here I put it on a swivel, so that way it can turn around. It's like a rotating disc. I put a few solar panels and some solar. So here's a lot of solar cells. So 9 solar cells create one panel in this case. Maybe you might have 4 solar cells. But the more solar cells that you have, the more energy you can create. So that's something you want to consider as well. So right when we jump into Tinkercad, these are just some things we want to think about as well. So if everyone wants to just slowly open up slido.com and then enter in this code, we can all go into Slido and start these questions together. All right, so now hopefully we all have Slido opened up. And what we can do now is we can actually go through the questions together. And it's going to be a little bit of fun questions, a little bit of knowledge questions. So it's okay. There's no wrong answers. Feel free to answer however you would like. So first question is for group A, where should we face our solar panels? So now where should we face our solar panels? Should they be towards the sky? Should they be towards, maybe towards the sun? Where do you think the solar panels should be facing? And how would they be facing them? So if I say towards the sun, I would probably need a little bit more than that, right? So you can just type your answer in into Slido. You can vote as anonymous, totally fine. We see one says towards the sun. Now, how would you face it towards the sun? Now, even if I do it towards the sun, do I put it towards the sun in one direction at like north? Do I want to do it in another direction? Right? Because remember I said the sun's not always going to be there. Do I want to put it at north at 12 o'clock where the sun might be there the longest? Do I want to put it at nighttime? Where would you put your solar panel? Where the most sunlight is. Exactly. That's a great way. Now let's try to think about let's try to use some critical thinking. Where is the best place we could put to get the most sunlight? Which way should we face it? Am I just going to face it towards the sun? Or am I going to face it towards the earth? Am I going to face it at a point where it's always going to be receiving the most sunlight? So let's say I put, let's say 12 o'clock here on earth, we have the most sun throughout the rest of the day in the summertime from like 12 to 9. But then in the wintertime from 12 to 5, there's not a lot of sun. So how would I get the most sun out of that? Right? So towards the sun is a great way to look at it, but we want to take it a step further. Do you want to put it to the edge of the moon closest to the sun, facing west and east? That's a really good one because the sun rises from the west and sets in the rises from the east and sets in the west. I never said you only have to do one solar panel, right? Now putting them underground would help, but you won't get sun, right? Where's the sunlight coming from? Where the most beneficial point is? So basically the question is, where do you think the most beneficial point is? All right. But those are all great. You guys get a lot of great answers. Towards the sun is more of a general idea, but hopefully this will also kind of help. Like we saw the way facing east to west, moving as the sun moves. Something to consider when you open up Tinkercad. Maybe you could put on a rotating disc. It's a great way to look at it as well. So it's fantastic answers. So next question I have for you folks, which one should we choose? Are we just going to have one huge giant solar panel? You saw in the video, it kind of just went all across the moon. Or are we going to have multiple solar panels, giving it to house? Maybe one giant solar panel with millions of cells could actually provide energy, right? Or are we going to be a little greedy with our solar panels, not share our energy? What would you choose in your lunar city? And remember when I said earlier with the PV, the more cells means it can have more power for more electricity. So a giant solar panel will have more cells, but multiple solar panels, you can still do the same thing. But this way, maybe for multiple solar panels, I'll have solar panels for my house. I'll have solar panels for my neighbor's house, have solar panels for the shopping center. You see what I mean? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. Looks like we're all going for multiple solar panels here. Give it 10 more seconds. Well, it looks like multiple solar panels does win quite a lot, but having one giant solar panel isn't. The only issue with it is that it's not super efficient. So you'd have all this electricity, but you wouldn't be able to use it anywhere, right? It's not, but maybe you could use it. Maybe you have like something super energy hungry that you'd be able to use it for. So those are great responses as well. All right, my next question to you folks is, should we color our solar panels? Maybe I just want to make my solar panel a special color. Maybe I just want to make it like green or orange or blue. This is more of a fun question. You can color whatever color you want. Maybe you just don't want to have a color. You just want to have a regular solar panel because maybe it's just what you want up there, right? Maybe you just want to be super efficient. You want to have just a black solar panel getting in all the sunlight, right? There's so many different ways you can look at it. So I see no and yes kind of fighting back and forth. We'll give this 30 more seconds. Seeing a lot of no's now. Okay. Interesting. Alrighty, so it looks like we don't really want to color our solar panels. Personally, I would color my solar panel just because, why not? I'm up on this moon. Might as well kind of go crazy, got my spray paints and all that. So my last question to you folks is, what should we color our solar panels? Now this could be whatever color you want. Maybe you want to have a clear solar panel, maybe you want to have black, maybe you want to have like a hot pink solar panel or like a neon yellow, right? There's so many different colors you could choose. We'll give this about We'll give it a minute for everyone to put in their answers. Blue, there's no wrong answer. You could put blue and white. You could put red and white for Canada. You can put you could put whatever color you want. Maybe you can put something so bright that you'll be able to see it from Earth. Flamboyantly black, it absorbs the sun. Mm-hmm. So it looks like we're all kind of agreeing with black, black because it does absorb the sun. So if you want to think from an efficiency standpoint, sure, black is a definite color, right? Nothing wrong with black. It's always a safe option. You see solar panels all the time. Sometimes you've probably seen blue solar panels. I've seen blue solar panels as well, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be black, right? But again, it's your lunar city. You can make it whatever color you want. And I say that because when you open Tinkercad up, you can try different colors out. Maybe you want to put like a green solar panel. I made a green solar panel before. It's totally fine, right? It really depends on your own personal preference. Because again, like I said, it is your lunar city. You're up on the moon. You want to think about what would be fun for you, right? Alrighty, so now we want to think about how we can actually use these solar panels. So there's a lot of different ways we can use these solar panels, but there's some ways that are more important than others. Firstly, we want to think about, okay, maybe I need some lights. Someone use some solar energy, grab some lights. Maybe I'll just use electricity in my whole house, right? Got the solar panel on the roof of my house. Sending electricity is giving me lights. It's giving me the power to flush my toilet. It's giving me power to turn on the TV, maybe to charge my phone to watch some Netflix. Life can be a little boring on the moon, so you want to use that solar electricity there. We also want to consider water heating. And now, water, when you kind of get hot water out of the pipes, the water doesn't come out hot. There's a heater that heats up the water that makes sure your hot water is always hot. And we would need some electricity to heat the heater, to turn on the heater, but to heat the water. So we can maybe have a pipe. So someone said put the solar panels underground. It doesn't need to be underground, but maybe it could work with things underground. Maybe it could work with the plumbing, right? Or we can have solar transportation. So again, put some solar panels on your car, on your truck, on an airplane even. But then again, there's no gravity, so maybe an airplane would be a bit of a stretch. Maybe you have an underground transportation system. Again, you could put the solar panels on the ground, right? And it'll basically send power to like a subway, right? Things like that. So there's definitely a lot of different ways you can use a solar panel. And what you guys are going to do in Tinkercad, play around with Tinkercad, see where you could put different solar panels. And again, a solar panel needs to have a lot of cells. Maybe you want to put it facing towards the sun. Maybe in your lunar city, you want to have it give electricity to something else, right? There's a lot of different ways we can consider on how to use these solar panels. So give you folks about maybe like 2 minutes to think about different places. Try to think about and plot out where you could actually put your lunar city. Okay, so I'll give you folks about 2 minutes to try to collect those thoughts. So once you're able to think about some ideas, I'm actually going to do, let's do right here. Tinkercad. So let's talk about a lunar city really quickly. And here we can see this screen. So again, I want to put some solar panels. So first things first, I want to make, I don't have a house or anything like that, got a bare bones, but I want to make some solar panels on like a little bit of a swivel, like a rotating disc. So what I'm going to do here, I'm in Tinkercad, I'm in 3D Designs. I'm going to grab this cylinder over here, make this cylinder, small enough to place this here, but wide enough to put my solar panel. So this disc is basically going to rotate. Maybe if I want to actually make it a proper, super good disc, I can make this small this way, put this here, right? And then put another one on top like this. Have this flat like this, got my little rotating surface, right? Whoops, that's not great. So it's gonna put this right here. Okay, there we go. This right here. There we go. And maybe I could put my solar panel on top, like right here. Right? But obviously, I would probably need to put this at an angle, right? So here, I'm just going to put this on this angle over here. Maybe I'm just going to put this down here. Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another cylinder right here, right? Pull this up over here, make this small, give it some support behind it. And then on this, I can put some more solar panels. Just, put this right here. So right now I got this red panel. Okay. We'll make this black because a lot of us want to have a black solar panel. Oh, that's the wrong one. Click this. And then I'll just do this like 4 more times to create my solar panel. So you do something like that. So now I made one cell on the solar panel. This thing's going to be rotating around over and over again. And once I make maybe like 9 or 10 more, maybe I'll place this in like 4 different corners of the city. Maybe I'll have them on different roofs so it always collects sunlight because as we know, the weather is not bad up there, right? So that being said, we have a good idea on how to use the different solar panels and all that good stuff. So hopefully everyone did enjoy this little Tinkercad session. Just talked a little about 3D design and how to apply our solar panel like this. So again, if you want to check out our social media, our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, just go to @OT_outreach or at Engineers Canada or at End of Tomorrow. So Tom. And if you guys do want to post your lunar cities, we'd be more than happy to see it. Just use the hashtag FCE Canada or hashtag FC Showcase 2022 in your post. So that way we can see it and we'd be more than happy to see it. So hopefully you guys did enjoy. We are going to be going to our closing ceremony now. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the 3D design workshop and your entire day today. So yeah, we're all just going to transition back over to the closing ceremony. So if everyone just make their way back to the mainstream to attend the final bit of this